Welcome back to the D.H.E show, where we talk about building empires without sacrificing on bedtime stories. Look, every episode, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to give you 2 to 4 actionable things that you can do today to start getting results. But above and beyond just being business people and entrepreneurs, we're dads and we're husbands. And to us, family, well, it needs to come first, because what's the point of building this thing if you're not bringing the family along with you on this journey? Today's episode, it's about this little book that we love so much called Atomic Habits. If you have never read the book, in like 2 seconds, it's all about doing really small incremental things every single day, stacked on top of other wins to get to a giant outcome at the end of the day. I use Atomic Habits when I do my marathon training. We use Atomic Habits when we're trying to build up all of our business goals. It's just really small, simple ways to get to the end journey. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how we actually do that, what we actually do. Matt and Ole are going to debate a little bit on the effectiveness of some of these tactics. And the whole goal is to help you as we kick off this new year, as we kick off goal planning, depending on where you are in your business journey and what you're trying to achieve for the year. You're going to have different goals, different visions, different dreams, but it's going to come back to executing on the habits, doing the things that you have to do every single day to get the result you're trying to achieve. So with that as the backdrop, I'm going to turn it over to Matt and Ole. Here we go. D.H.E show. Take it away, guys.
Welcome back to the D.H.E show. We took a little bit of a break there for a little thing called the holidays, and we are back and we are ready to cover in this podcast some Atomic Habits. So Matt, I know we've talked about Atomic Habits before a little bit, but what are Atomic Habits and why should anybody pick up that book?
Atomic Habits, man. It's one of those books that you read that kind of changes your whole mentality on how to do anything, how to accomplish big goals, really. I think the easiest way to understand what Atomic Habits is for me is it's breaking down a habit or something that you want to achieve into like the smallest possible daily thing you can do to get there, and then just doing that thing every single day until however long goes by, you're at the goal. Like that's as simple as it gets.
What's different from an atomic habit versus just a habit?
Well, I think just a habit doesn't necessarily translate to something you're trying to achieve necessarily. Like I have a habit, I guess sort of like I have a habit to brush my teeth at night. Like it's good for you, but it doesn't necessarily get you a thing, a goal, an achievement at the end of the day. I look at Atomic Habits as I want to accomplish something specific, something big, something audacious. And so I need to incorporate training or some sort of daily thing into my life to make that thing happen. I mean, what do you think? Add to it. What do you think Atomic Habits are to you? What's your?
I mean, if you look at it, if you're basing off the book, it's. I think you're more accurate. I mean, when I think about it, the biggest thing that I thought about when I think of Atomic Habits, and I don't know why, but I go to the habit stacking of, you already have habits in your life. And so how do you stack a habit? So when I think of Atomic Habits, I think of taking something you already do and saying, when I do this, then I'm going to do this. And making that a non-negotiable in your life, because that's how you're going to accomplish the goal at the end of the day. So for me, one of the things that I've noticed is if I wake up or after I work out, when I have coffee, my habit is now when I have coffee, I journal. Okay. Yeah. So it's just an easy, foolproof way to make sure I get 3, 4, 5 minutes worth of journaling down. That's my perspective. I know that's a little bit different. Everybody's got different things, but, it also is incumbent upon the fact that you got to want a goal. You got to want something in the end. So if you're listening to this and you don't have a goal, then don't pick up the book because it's not going to do you any good.
And what we wanted to do in the show today is, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the book, but really, I think it's more important or more beneficial to understand how we actually use it in our lives. I think the example you just gave makes total sense. If you want to journal more, set yourself up to journal more. You habit stack. You do it when you already are doing something that you do every single day. You just add something at the end of it so that it becomes second nature to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious, from a business and personal perspective, and again, it doesn't really have to be an atomic habit. I'm more thinking like, what are your habits? Like, what have you changed in the last 90 days, Matt, that has allowed you to become more successful in one or two facets of your life? Because I know we both had a lot going on. We both talked a lot about this. So what are a couple of things that you've done habitually and help develop those habits so that it's just become second nature? It's not a habit. Now it's like autopilot.
Well, I think the one that I wanted to sort of highlight today and what we're talking about, since we are a business show, we're also, dads and husbands, but today is kind of a business thing for me. And that's my big thing for Atomic Habits. The takeaway I had, I understand habit stacking, and there's so much more to the book that we're not even talking about. But for me, my big takeaway was, if you just do one consistent thing every single day, right? Just get 1% better every single day at one thing that you pick. It's like a 33 times improvement over the course of a year. Right?
I mean, it's an enormous improvement. I mean, we talked about that when I got back into running about a month ago, just for fun, not for serious. You're just adding 1% every run. It's a nominal percent, but before you know, it's a nominal amount, but before you know it, you're running 3-4 minutes longer.
Yeah, it's
really cool.
So the one I wanted to highlight today is a lot of people get super stressed out about social media or marketing in general. It's a huge thing to try to tackle. It is really hard to get traction in it. It's really hard to get followers. It's really hard to get people to read your stuff and pay attention with it. And I think people kind of throw their hands up and give up. LinkedIn for me, and I know for you too, Ole, it's been a platform that we want to go after and create a following on and just sort of create a presence on. And so I made a commitment. It's not a habit stack. It's more a habit in general that I wanted to, get myself to do. By around 8 o'clock every single morning, I had to have a LinkedIn post. I'm not a person who can plan a whole bunch of content, so I can't sit down and plan out weeks in advance. I'm kind of a in the moment guy. And so I said at 8 o'clock is my time to sit down for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever it takes me to think of and write up and draft a LinkedIn post. And I can tell you the weeks that I'm super consistent and I do it every single day are the weeks where I'm getting 10, 15, 20,000 engagements, impressions, whatever, on the stuff I'm putting out there, which is not where I was a year ago, right? I was not getting that much traction. But it's because I've been fairly consistent with doing this one thing every single day, where it compounds and adds up. And like I said earlier, before you know it, you're hitting the goal and you're achieving something that, quite frankly, you didn't even think was possible.
No, I think that's probably the biggest piece when I think about it is it's the consistency. And I love the idea of making it habitual, but first it starts to start small. And that's probably my biggest piece of advice is, Matt, when we were getting into the social media post, you need to post every single day. It was overwhelming. And so I started
what was overwhelming about it?
It takes a shitload of time. And to sit down and to plan out content or create content when you've got 800 things going on, and I know that's an excuse, but when you got all this shit going on, it's difficult. And then you get discouraged. Oh, I missed 3 days last week. Oh, I'm such a loser.
Yeah.
But you're not. What you need to do is say okay, I'm gonna do 2 days this week. Then I'm gonna do 3 days. Then I'm gonna do 4 days. Work your way into it. I hate the arbitrary, the BS of I have to do 5 days a week or I'm a failure. Piss off. Only 1 to 2% of the world is probably that regimented, if that. So give yourself some leniency.
I think the pushback, it's not even pushback. It's not difficult to be consistent every single day if you are biting off a small thing. Right? If I ask you every single day to brush your teeth, you're going to do it because it takes 2 minutes. If I ask you every single day to go for an hour-long run, that's way harder. That's a way bigger commitment. That's a lot harder to be super consistent.
Yeah,
on.
but
and that's kind of the point with Atomic Habits is it should be really small things that you absolutely can do every single day that will ultimately add up to what you're trying to get.
And that Matt is, I think, the key that everybody listening needs to realize is that it's small incremental changes, incremental habits. It's not I'm going to run a marathon in August. I better go run 7 miles today. You know, if you could, but I think that's the issue. I mean, I was having a conversation with my brother the other day, and we were talking about how Americans just want a quick fix, right? They want to look in the mirror and they want their weight to have come off, and they want, you know, X, Y, and Z to be done. They want everything now. And I think when I think about Atomic Habits, like, it's a great reminder that it's going to take time. You are going to fail, and that's okay. It's progress, not perfection. And it's going to happen. So when you're doing this, like the thing I think about, right? If I look at my last 90 days, 120 days at Switchback, I've gotten a lot more consistent about posting. Now, have I habit stacked posting? No. And there's probably a reason. I just haven't made it an innate priority, and that's shameful on me. Also, I mean, I'm just going to be honest with people. I've had a lot of shit going on. I've had a really unenjoyable last 3 months on the business front in many regards, which has taken my eye off the ball. And I say that because if you have an awesome habit and you get derailed or you get sidetracked, it's not the end of the world. You can jump back on it. I know Matt's gotten a lot more consistent with his habits. I've struggled on some, but I've done some great things on others. You know, weirdly enough, like one of them that I oftentimes think about is like, you know, whether, you know, tobacco, alcohol, whatever, like, you know, they're all habits that we form. And to break a habit, it's a habit that you need to create to break that habit. And it doesn't typically start with, I'm just going to stop this minute. You set incremental changes. I remember, funny enough, caffeine, when you talk about a habit, right, Matt, you and I both have our coffees. We both love it. I remember I said to a doctor one time, I'm like, I'm going to give up caffeine. And the lady's like, yeah, there's no need to do that. Yeah. And I started laughing. And then I go, I'm just going to quit cold turkey. And she's like, that's a terrible idea. And I was like, why? She's like, you're going to get headaches. You're going to be angry. She's like, maybe you won't, but most people are, whatever. And I started thinking about it. And like, you put it in the perspective, like, you need incremental change. So if you're, you know, from 6 to 1, I know that's in reverse, but a lot of times, most of my habits are trying to break a bad habit. So I'm trying to figure out how to get less of something.
Well, so do you think there's an opportunity to rethink that and reframe that? Like, why spend time trying to unbreak things and just instead focus on just trying to create one better thing each day?
I don't actually know if that's a bad thing though, because right, like, I mean, it's how you frame it. It's glass half full, glass half empty. I mean, I think a lot of that stuff's just bullshit and psychologically stupid.
What?
But the whole thing of like, oh, you're glass half full or glass half empty person, like, who cares? It's got half a glass. It's irrelevant. But when I look at it, like, I don't know. I think you can use habits in both ways, right? I mean, I think you can use the habit stacking, the atomic habits, these small and incremental habits to break something, but also to gain something. I don't think it's wrong either way.
I agree. I guess where I'm thinking to what you said a few minutes ago about, you know, there's been a lot of stuff that's happened. There's a lot of things that come up throughout a business, throughout family, throughout relationship. There's always challenges. There's always stress. There's always unforeseen things. I think for me, the whole point of an atomic habit is that it's something you're going to do no matter what, because you are trying to achieve a goal at the end of the day that requires you to be consistent and do something consistent day in and day out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. And I think we're both saying the same thing. I think, like, again, in order to be your best self, you have to break habits, which means that you have to have a habit to wind that habit down.
I think the thing that we're not saying the same is that I know shit comes up, but I try to make sure that an atomic habit is something no matter what I'm going to do. Like, I don't want to fall off for a week or 2 or 3 or a month because you're so far behind at that point. Yes, of course, you can always jump back on. Totally get it. But
yeah, it's like the alcoholic's conundrum, right? If you have a slip and you have a beer, which I'm not condoning, but if you have a beer, do you just go have 40 because you lost your sobriety? No. Well, you shouldn't, but that's what some people do. So same thing with the habit. Like, if you miss a day of the habit, don't beat yourself up. You're human. Shit happens. Get back on that the next day. I'm not saying delay it 6 months or 3 months or whatever. what I'm saying, Matt, is like, don't beat yourself up. Don't feel like you're a failure because you screwed up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with that part. I think it was the part where you said it's okay if you take 3 months off of something.
No, it's not okay if you take 3 months off of something. That was no. I don't think I actually said. Did I say that? If I did, I didn't mean it that way. What I meant is like, you're gonna screw up. Don't beat yourself up. Just make those changes and get back on to whatever and put those atomic habits back in.
Cool.
Because it's. I think that's the thing. Is like, this shit's not easy. This might be one of the most cited business books or books in business, and people rave about it. Yet, like.
Atomic Habits?
Yeah, like 0.5% or maybe 0.1% or I bet it's 1/100% of people actually utilize this shit. It's difficult. It's extremely difficult.
The Atomic Habit idea or habit stacking or which part?
Atomic Habits and habit stacking. I mean, it goes against human nature in my opinion. Like, we get distracted by all these things, and we're this flash in a pan type society now. This stuff is consistent. It's difficult. And oftentimes it's painful until you get to the point where you can see the progress that you've made.
That's what I think is the biggest difference is it today, in today's world, we're flash in the pan. We are shiny object syndrome people. But as a species, I don't know. Maybe 500 years ago, it was no different. There was always craziness. But I look at people who are really successful in business or in training or in whatever the thing is that they're super best in class in, and they're just doing simple things every single day. They just don't deviate. They don't because they don't feel like doing something is not an excuse to not do it.
Yeah,
they just do the things they have to do every day.
Yeah, so there's a great quote I heard years ago. And it's called Marry the Mundane. Those that are really successful marry the mundane.
Yeah.
So it's the boring, the non-exciting shit. I think I said this. A few years ago, I hired a 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I don't know, maybe it was right before COVID. Hired a sales coach. I was struggling at my former job with some things. And one of the first things this lady made me do was go through this personality assessment. And I was like, well, I know my personality. And what I actually didn't understand how important it was to get, strengths finders and personality and all that stuff. Anyway, it was really interesting. You talk about habit stacking. One of the things that I changed drastically after that was, she said to me, she goes, Ole, I understand that you think mornings are a great time for you to go out and meet people. She goes, you should never meet with someone before noon. And I was like, well, why? And up until this point, I was doing, breakfast, a coffee meeting, all this stuff. And what I learned was, she goes, your everything in your personality says that you're going to be drained mentally and physically by about 1 o'clock. And she was right. She goes, how often have you ever picked up the phone and made a cold call at 1 o'clock? I go, ugh, not very often.
She said, don't meet with people in the morning?
Do not meet with people in the morning. Because she goes, you should
meet with them when you're drained in the afternoon?
Because that gives me energy. When you look at my personality style, I get energy from being around other people. So do all the things that require the most mental fortitude, that are the mundane, that are the energy draining vampire shit of business. Do that in the morning. In the afternoon is when you go out and you do the things that you are going to enjoy. And that was just before I read Atomic Habits. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I was reading Atomic Habits. It all made sense. But it made sense. Like, all of a sudden I went from all of this morning stuff to, I don't think I maybe once a month would have breakfast with someone, because like, hey, I'm going to get in at 8. I'm going to get all this stuff done that I hate, that I despise, but I have the energy. And then I'm mentally drained of it by about 11, and that's when I would start doing my networking meetings and all the other stuff. Because otherwise, and again, I go back to like the whole habit stacking played into that and all this stuff. But that's the other piece. Like, this is an irrelevant concept to you if you don't understand who you are.
Maybe. I disagree. I think no matter what, this is relevant to anybody. That if you're trying to achieve a goal, you got to do things every day to get.
What percentage of people actually have goals?
I think way more than you're giving credit for.
I think statistically, what do they say? If the goal's not written down, there's a very slim probability you're going to achieve it.
Yeah,
and I think it's like 96% of people don't have goals. 90. I mean, it's a we can Google that. Look it up, Matt. I mean, it's an astonishing percentage of people, and they give up at the first sign of trouble.
I don't know what that has to do with saying that this is an irrelevant conversation if you don't know yourself, though.
Okay, so you can spend, and this is a great point. That's why I think this podcast drives a lot of value. I think it's difficult if you don't like. If I did not understand who I was, if I hadn't gone through the personality and the strengths finders,
yeah,
I would have probably not seen any progress in the last couple of years of my last job. Once I understood that, and then I read Atomic Habits, it all made sense to me of like, oh, yeah, so I need to habit stack in the morning. When are you habit stacking? Just like you. Okay, Matt, I want you to get up every morning at 4:45 like me and start working out.
I wouldn't do. That's not my goal.
But that's the point. Is you have to figure out what works for you. And so many people, they're going to read Atomic Habits. They're going to read anything, and they're going to try and do it. They're going to try this one size fits all because it worked for you. It's going to work for me.
But my point is, what's in Atomic Habits that wouldn't work for everybody, regardless of if you know yourself?
That's a good question.
I understand. I think what you're talking about is super relevant. It's just not relevant to this particular conversation. In terms of the idea of having a goal every day that you're going after, or a habit every day you're trying to do, yes, of course, do it when you're most productive. Separate conversation on how to optimize it. But the fact is, if you want to run a marathon, you got to train every day. Whether or not you're a morning person, afternoon person, evening, it doesn't really matter. You have to run every day, or a lot of days. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think Matt, to some extent, I was referencing like you can go read the book, but if you are not willing to put in the work, because it's not easy, it is not easy. If you're not willing to put in the work, that's what I'm saying. Like there are a lot of people that just are not willing to put in the work. And why waste the time reading the book if you're not willing to put in the work? Like this is going to be tough. It is demoralizing. It is difficult. It's awesome, right? It's a life changer, but it's tough. Anybody that makes it seem like it's this really easy, simple thing to do, it's not as easy and simple for most people as what you give her credit for, because most people are on autopilot and they don't want to think about this.
So when you say know yourself, are you more saying you need to understand what you're actually trying, like what do you want to accomplish?
Bingo. What are you trying to accomplish and why? Why are you doing this? If I said, okay, so Matt, like if we talk a lot about fitness, we talk a lot about working out. You and I, not on this podcast. And one of the things is like, why are you doing this? It's never going to stick if you don't know why you're doing it. You don't need a goal to run a marathon, but you need some sort of tangible goal that goes along with this. Yes. And a reason behind it. You need your why behind it.
Yeah.
Then it's going to work. And so that's what I'm saying. It's like, know yourself and know what you want. But so many of us, and I was as guilty as anybody when I was in my former job, they would talk about someone and this person had success in this one area. And I'd be like, oh, I need to call in that area. I can have success. Well, why was I trying to call a construction company when I didn't give a shit about construction? Yeah. Right? Yes. So that's what I meant by know yourself and don't get sidetracked and focus on what you want and need, not what is a flash in the pan.
I think that's a brilliant insight. If your habit stack, or if your one thing that you're focusing on, which by the way, the One Thing is an amazing book. We'll talk about that at a different time. But if your one thing is, I'm going to call 100 construction companies every single day because Joe in the office, that's what he did. And he grew a business that's, the business that I want to have in terms of volume and money and profit, whatever. But you hate calling on construction people, you're spot on. You're not going to do that. But the idea of call 100 people is still relevant. It's just find the right 100 people that you give a shit to talk to. Knowing your why.
Yes, Matt, and I you succinctly said that, and it took me a while to get that out of my mouth this morning. But that is exactly what I meant. Like you have to understand why you're doing it and what the end game is.
So going back to the LinkedIn example that I was starting with, our why, it's not to be influencers. It's not to build a following just for following's sake. It's to put out a message to people on what we're trying to build here. And, in the last year, I was just looking at my numbers for 2023. I've got, similar following as you. I think it's a little over 2,000 people. And in the last year, just by doing that post at 8 a.m., mostly consistently, I think I was 85, 90% consistent. I had something like 300,000 impressions on the content that I put out there last year. Right? That's a lot of people. If you would have said, hey, Matt, you need to have 300,000 impressions at the end of the year, and I go and post my first thing and I get 400 people, there are 400 impressions, and I'd be like, how the fuck am I going to get to 300,000 at the end of the I would have just, that would have been such a massive goal I would have not even been able to comprehend. Just do it every single day.
So Matt, and I think it's an interesting piece that we could dive into in depth, because you nailed something. Now you're talking about impressions, but most people, it's sales, it's goal, whatever it is. And I was guilty. I worked in a high pressure cutthroat industry, and these guys were like, you need to sell $250,000 to $350,000 for the new insurance business every single year. And you start off the fiscal year and you start to panic. Oh, well,
how am I going to get there?
How am I going to get there? And that's where I personally always struggled, was like, well, I don't know how I'm going to get there. And you got to break it down into incremental daily things that are going to get you there. And you also need to realize something along this path. If you're in sales and you're doing this, or you're like your impressions, all you can control is your behavior. You can't control whether or not someone buys from you. You can't control whether or not someone looks at your shit. You can just control your behavior. And that, to me, is one of the most important lessons that I've learned in the last couple of years. Control the controllable. The rest will fall into place if it's consistent.
Yep. Absolutely. 100%. That has been proven out time and time and time again by the most successful people I've ever seen. You can't force we can't force someone to buy Switchback. But we can consistently put our message out in front of people. We can consistently talk to people. We can consistently engage and interact in a way that we think is going to drive sales, but you can't force it. You just got to
bingo.
Keep doing the thing that you know is the thing that has to happen.
Go ahead. I was going to say, Matt, what are some of the habits that you've built over the last 3 months here at Switchback?
From a Switchback perspective, it's similar to what I'm doing on the personal side, what you're doing on the personal side with the LinkedIn stuff. We are consistently putting out content. It's not go super hard, put 50 pieces of content out in 1 week and then go quiet for a couple weeks. It's every day, put something out, right? And if you look at our numbers, every single week, it is getting better and better and better and better and better and better. Because we are being consistent with it. We are consistently putting out a newsletter. It's not a, hey, please buy our product. It's, hey, here's 5 things that we think are super important or really fun or relevant or just to help your life. It's not selling. It's just talking and communicating, being consistent with it. It happens to lead to sales. We are consistently asking people to join our email list. Why? Because we want to consistently be talking to people. I mean, those are probably the 3 biggest things that we have been doing really in the last 3 months that are really starting to pick up and generate for us.
No, you're spot on. I think a lot about that. I mean, what advice do you have to anybody, like if they're getting into posting on a regular basis? What advice, what feedback do you have to keep them motivated and supported as they go through the doldrums of posting, feeling like nobody gives a shit?
Well, I go back to, I guess one thing I said and one thing you said is that, first of all, understand what the hell you're trying to achieve. Right? Like, are you trying to achieve something that's even attainable? Like, be realistic. Okay. So understand where you're trying to go, be realistic, and get it. Once you have that frame in your head, go find someone who's done it and do what they do every single day. If you know that it worked for another business that's similar to you, that you want to do it a similar way, it's going to work for you. Just do the things and stay consistent with it. You may not see traction right away. You may not see results right away, but it's going to work. It's people have already proved it. Don't reinvent the wheel. It's the biggest mistake everybody makes, is they think they have to do it some special way. You don't. Like, yes, do it with your take on things, but there's a format that works. Just do it.
Matt, I think that's a great lesson, that you don't have to do it any certain special way. I mean, when I met Matt was telling me a lot of shit that I didn't want to hear. And I was so dead set I was going to do everything different. And I had no real justification to do things different. And thankfully, I listen to Matt in many regards, and we've proven that we can make Switchback quite successful. But the funny part is, like, if I went out there just to be different for the sake of being different, you're probably not going to be successful.
That's called spinning your wheels.
It just doesn't work. Now, if your point is to be different for the sake of being different, but you are consistent and you do it every day and you put the time and effort, maybe you'll probably find success. The problem is, I think a lot of us, and myself included, when I started posting more regularly, I wanted to see those likes. I wanted to see the crack cocaine just boom, 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 boom. And it doesn't happen like that. But it's the consistent posting that gets those opportunities. Yeah. So it's funny. I mean, I'll tell you, with my posting, I've had people that I don't know, people that I know, reach out and be like, hey, man, can I talk to you about X, Y, and Z? Or can I, I'd love to get your opinion on this. Hey, so even though I'm a small potato in a big world, we're making an impact with the people that we're interacting with, which is, at the end of the day, really what I care about.
Yeah.
So, Matt, on the personal side, I know you like to run long distances like Forrest Gump just for fun. What habits, what atomic habits, habit stacking, what have you done in that regard? Because it's January. Fitness is tough. I'm guessing 80% of America's already fallen off their fitness routine. What advice do you have to people on the fitness side? And what have you done? How have you gotten creative? I know you're like, and for those listening, like, Matt's not a morning person. We fight a lot in the morning because I'm a morning person. He's mornings. Not. So we really butt heads. But what do you have for the listeners?
Dude, it's nothing fancy or groundbreaking. I tell my 9-year-old this all the time. You have to do the things you don't want to do. You just do. Like, if the plan says run today and you don't feel like it, I don't care. Like, you have to get the mental toughness to just go do it. And that's been the biggest shift for me really in the last 4 years. Probably it has been, like, I did 75 Hard, which I really, really like that program. It's not a fitness program. It's not a workout program. It's a mindset thing. It teaches you do the things you have to do even when you don't feel like it. If you want to run a marathon, if you want to climb a mountain, if you, whatever the thing is that you want to do, if you want to get good at something, you have to do the work, no matter what. Rain, snow, or shine. You got to put in the time. That's it.
Yeah, you're spot on. What advice do you have for those that are starting the habit stacking? They've got a great routine going, but maybe they're struggling. Maybe they're hitting the snooze button, or they're making an excuse.
Yeah.
What do you have for those people? Because I feel you. I mean, life is tough. Shit happens. I've got a million excuses. I mean, nobody really wants to hear them. So what advice do you have? You've been successful. You run 2 marathons. You continue to train.
I think if you don't have the mental toughness yet to do it on your own, totally get it. Like, not many people do. Find a buddy. Find an accountability partner. I'm not saying that you need a workout partner or a work partner, but find a group. Find someone that you can connect with. Join the D.H.E tribe. Like, we've got a Facebook group dedicated to this sort of stuff. You need encouragement. You need someone to hold you accountable. You need to say on Monday morning, here's the things I'm going to do this week. Guys, girls, friends, people, whoever, like, hold me accountable. Check in with me. Help push me when I don't feel like doing it. You'd be surprised at what a little encouragement and a little motivation will do for you.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. I know you said that to the audience, but I think about a little bit of encouragement for yourself and for others is amazing. We could do a whole podcast on that. I mean, it's so gnarly when you hear someone say something awesome and keep you motivated. And so that's just a great reminder. Like, just be positive. There's enough negative idiots out there. Just be positive. Support those around you, and good things are going to happen. Like, that's a habit unto itself, like being happy, I think. But my perspective,
glass half full, Ole.
Yeah, see, I understand that analogy, but I think it's funny. Like, well, they're a glass half empty guy. Just shut up and just.
We're gonna wrap this thing up. I want to hear. You didn't talk all that much in this one. Give me one habit stack, one thing that you're focused on in 2024 that you're gonna commit to daily and get done.
My habit stack, my one of the habits that I'm going to commit to is posting regularly every day at either 9 a.m. or 2 o'clock on LinkedIn. I'm going to, one of the goals, and I haven't done it yet, but it's going to be, my goal, I'm going to profess to you, Monday mornings, I'm now going to dedicate the first hour and a half of my time in the office to making my post for the next 5 days, to putting that on there.
7 days.
7 days. I don't post a lot on the weekend.
Still?
I don't get a lot of people that care.
The algorithm does.
The algorithm does. Okay. I'm going to post 7 days a week, and it's going to be good content business and my personal life. And I'm going to schedule that out. I'm going to create that content on Mondays. And I think that one other piece, and I think this is really interesting because I've struggled with this. I feel like I shouldn't do that during 9 to 5. And it's funny because as an entrepreneur, I'm like, well, I need to go do, a revenue generating activity. I need to go do, but like, this is business. Like building your social media presence, assuming that you are trying to build a brand or build a business, that is a 9 to 5 job. And so I need to get it out of my mind that I shouldn't spend during the day time posting on LinkedIn when that is one of the most important things I can do. Does that make sense, Matt?
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. And I'm glad that you just publicly declared it because now we can hold you accountable and talk about it.
Hold me accountable, please.
Nice. All right, we're going to wrap this thing up. Habit stacking, atomic habits, huge power if you guys embrace this concept. And I really meant it when I said it earlier. Join the D.H.E tribe. It's on Facebook. It's called the D.H.E tribe. We talk about this stuff. We encourage people. We hold each other accountable in good ways. We teach and talk. Like it's a good place to be. So check us out. Join us. Share the show. Do all the things, please. Wouldn't you? Leave us a review. I'll let you finish, Ole.
No, that's perfect, man. I appreciate it. This was awesome. This was a great discussion. And the biggest thing I'm going to tell you is creating bad habits seems to be super easy. Creating good habits is incredibly difficult, and it takes work, and it's a mindset shift. So if you want to change the course of your life in 2024, incremental small changes are what is going to get you there. So go buy the book, go read about it, or as simple it is, just say, hey, this is my habit and I am going to do it. But one final piece of advice. Say it out loud and tell someone about it. It makes you accountable. It makes it real. Get it out there and don't be afraid of it.
Awesome. Cool. Take care, everyone. Until
Peace.
next time. See ya.